It'll be a little hard to hear everybody, but I think we can make this work. I think everything will be good.
Dave, you are live now.
Very good. Welcome to the September 17th final Budget and Finance meeting for the year. Let's start with doing our Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, we're here. Changes. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't want to brag, but the Phillies came back from 7-0 last night and won the game handily. Scored 15 or 16 runs. Bragging a little bit. Okay, with us today, representing the quorum of the committee members, we have Joe Capello, we have Phil Winkler and myself in person, and we have Joe Keenley and Chang Yi on the speakerphone, so that constitutes a quorum of 5 people. And with that, I think we are good to go. So that's our roll call. The first thing we'll do is the adoption of the agenda. The 2 main things that we'll be talking about today are the year-to-date budget performance, and then do a final review, hopefully approval and recommendation to send this up to the council as our obligation to come up with new revenue streams for the town. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda, please? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, I think we are good to go with that. All right. Kate, if you'd now bring up the minutes document. You're already ahead of me. Okay, second point here is to review the agenda, or rather the minutes from our July 9th meeting. Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? And I know everyone's been over this in very exhaustive, thorough detail to look at it. Do I have any comments or questions regarding the minutes from the last meeting? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nice. Good. Okay, that's adopted, and we're good with the meeting minutes. We'll convert those from draft to final version. Moving right along. Next order of business is the main 2 topics. We'll start with looking at the year-to-date budget performance using the Financial Summary 2 schedule. Chang and Joe, we have that up on the screen here. It's available on the town website, and I believe I had sent a copy of that to you at some point a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Do you have access to that, so we can talk over that?
I'm actually driving, Dave, but I remember it from reviewing it.
I know, you have that photographic memory, Joe. Or was that Chang, sorry. Okay. All right, so just to do the highlights of the financial schedule, as of the end of August, we are in very positive position for the town overall. We have a total revenue of $3.1 million with a year-to-date budget of $1.9 million, so we are much to the good. Due largely to our transfer tax cash cow and the parking permits and meters is well over budget as well. All other revenue is significantly over. Bill, do you have a quick insight on that one that you can share with us for the all other revenue? Sorry, I forgot to look at that before.
So we are doing well, positive numbers. Transfer tax, we budgeted 735,000. We're roughly in the million right now. Seasonal parking, we budgeted about 320,000. We're approximately 342. Daily parking, we're almost to our number of 435. We're at 431 now. Bonfires, we budgeted 39. We budgeted 35, and we're actually at 39,000. So overall, we are doing well, and we're in positive numbers.
Anything on the all other revenue bucket that's, you know, over 200% of the year to date? But, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you know offhand what's in all other revenue buckets.
All other revenue buckets. I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, well, we'll refer back to that. Let's just leave it at it's, you know, substantially well over. Moving on then to the expenses. Bill, you want to give us just a quick highlights of some of the buckets that are over and, you know, rationale for those, please?
So you'll see that $11,000, approximately $11,000 bill, that was for a vehicle that and actually struck one of our insurance that we were reimbursed on. Our police officers that are reimbursed by the government, that shows us over there. Okay, we'll get about 80%. Our over budgeted maintenance, I made the decision to bring on one maintenance person. But we are over budget budgeted $1,000. We're burning about 3,900. But as we go into the off season, that'll dip a little bit, and a lot of that licenses, reach out program and education program, license for the streets. There was a program that is each one. That was we're burning a little bit more than we should there normally, but it's been worth it. And then our donations to the beach patrol. You'll see that approximately $10,000 out of that to go for the competition that they went to down in Texas, where two of the teams, both the female and the male team, placed high against other lifeguard competitions around the country. But all that will be covered by the donations.
Okay. Any questions, Bill, about the overall numbers that we described and we've seen? Just a quick note to the overall here is the differential is looks like 1,064, 804 total to the good, and we're due to be 231 according to budget. So that's about $750,000 or so, or almost 800 really over our expected net. And obviously everybody's happy about that. Sean or Joe, any questions or comments about the general status we have reviewed?
No questions from Joe.
Yeah.
I just have one. When are we going to go to Vegas for that 800 grand?
Chairman, sorry to bother you. I have Gary Persinger on my text message saying he's trying to get on your phone.
Okay.
Couldn't get access, got
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was him. I didn't realize.
went to voice.
Can you tell him to call in again?
Will do.
I don't know if I can merge three on an iPhone though. I don't know. I'll try, but I may not be able to.
We can
merge
use
three.
mine. If he wants to dial into mine, we'll just put another phone up there.
Okay, that's fine.
That
Yeah, let's
work?
do that. Let's
Can
do
you
that,
give
'cause
him my
I think you
number
can
there?
only merge two calls. I don't think you can
Oh,
merge
I
three.
just told him to call your phone again.
Well, let me see what happens. We'll give it a shot.
Okay.
Bear with us for a second, guys.
What's your number?
302-300-2203.
2203.
Correct.
Very good. Gary, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, let me try to merge it so we have you on our call. Okay, I think we now have all three folks on the call here. Chang and Joe, you're here still, right? Oh, sorry, guys. Are you there? Everyone there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, so I think we're good. I think we have everybody here. Sorry, Gary, I saw the call come in, but I didn't recognize the number. I thought it was somebody trying to sell me a used car warranty. Okay, so Gary, just to give you an update, we have reviewed the Summary 2 financial statement as of the end of August, and just had a couple of comments from Bill as to some of the buckets there. Obviously, we're in good shape. So, Gary, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
No, I did see the fees, a lot of fees, pretty much up to speed.
Okay, very good. Okay, so that completes the part about reviewing the year-to-date budget performance. If anybody has any questions, please pipe up now. Oh, Mayor Cook.
No, I was just waiting to fly away.
Okay. By the way, we have Mayor Cook, Emeritus Mayor Cook, and also Bill Stevens here with us as well. Okay, so we will now move on to the new revenue sources document that I've shared with everyone. This is our obligation to recommend to the council some new revenue sources that we could consider enacting for the town. I put together this in a format that has sort of a text beginning just as an introduction to it, and the purpose and the background of it. The real meat of what we're about to discuss is on the second page in the chart there. And most of these we've already had some discussion about. Kate, can you scroll down to the second page, please? And I just wanted to go through them individually and have a little discussion, adjust anything that we think should be adjusted, and hopefully we'll all agree to pass this up to the council for their future consideration and recommendations. Okay? All right, so the first item is to increase the business license fees. Kate, there's one more document, if you would bring it up. It's the one that says business license rate analysis. That's a spreadsheet that Sheena had done back in December. It would be current as of the previous fiscal year. And what it shows us is that there's the ability to potentially capture significant additional revenue for the town by doing some modest increases. Note that there has not been an increase on most of these licenses for quite some time, in some cases, decade or more, I believe. It's been quite some time, if I recall. And so what Sheena had done back then is looking at the different types of licenses, and if you go down the columns, the base rate is column B, that's the existing price of each license. Take, for instance, the in-town small business license in line 9, the current fee for that is $273. To use an example, what it was paid in that year, which is last year, not this year currently, was a little over $6,000. By increasing the license $5, not percentage, just dollars, $7 and $10, this is the incremental revenue that the town would receive. It's not huge in each category, as you can see. So there's the overall, and if you look at this, the total licenses was about just shy of $302,000, and it would increase anywhere from $340 to $356 to $382, depending on the amount of increase of each type of license. One other important fact that she brought out here is the discrepancy between the out-of-town small business license and the in-town. And if you note her comment on the right-hand side of line 16, there's $61,000 capable of being captured for the town if we were to make the out-of-town small business license, the same cost, $273 as the in-town. Just an FYI. So that gives us the ability to say, we look down at line 36 near the bottom. Okay, we scroll down a little bit. Line 36, the additional income to the town with these modest increases of $5, $7, and $10 per license would be anywhere from $50,000 to about $100,000. So that's the analysis figure for that. Any questions?
Dave, I have a question.
Yes, Joe?
Dave, what is the percentage of increase on the 5, 7, 10 licenses?
It varies with each license fee since they vary so much. But you can see if you look at the price of, I think it's column C here, shows the actual amount. So in the case of a small, here's the one I'm looking for here. In-town small business license is $273. I lost that field. There it is $273. So that would increase by $5, $7, or $10. But some of these, you know, are $380, $380, and smaller denominations for the rental income, for the rental licenses. So it varies depending on which type of license we're talking about. So net.
So these are insignificant percentage increases for the business.
They are not anything that the visitors would pay. These are what the commercial purveyors in the town would pay. Right.
I have a question about that.
Hold on one second, Joe. Joe, any follow-up?
Yeah, good
Okay.
job.
Okay. Joe?
So, when you say in-town versus out-of-town business licenses, what do you mean? That the company based in-town or out-of-town?
I believe that's the case.
Yes. So Spizzato comes into town to do a business that's an out of town.
So how much is that license? Is it less than what the?
It is.
Yeah, it's $109 versus $273.
Okay, well, my only perspective on this is based on small businesses that come in town to do things like single-owned businesses or whatever, not an example like that, it's a big company. And compared to other towns, what the rates are to get a business license, will not outprice us because you don't want to discourage small businesses from getting a license here. And they also have to usually get a parking tag too, because otherwise they're gonna get tickets or whatever, or they have to at least pay for the day. Because I know, having gotten small business licenses in surrounding towns, it's not $273 for a small business, so something to think about.
Keep in mind that these are just recommendations to the council that we'll make to encourage them to look further in and do more analysis of this. But I think this speaks to a very modest increase, having not been made over many, many years in most cases, could bring significant additional revenue for the town, and that's really our goal here is to make that recommendation.
Right, I just want to distinguish between a small business and a larger company, or maybe looking at considering other things too.
You bet. You bet. Okay. So that is the one related, that's the first line here, increased business license fees. Now these are my rankings for both the priority, okay, can we go back to the original table? These are my rankings and are up for discussion and revision. Priority I thought would be an A since it is both relatively straightforward and it's not going to harm anybody to do a modest increase like this. Plus it hasn't been done in some time. And the time frames are short, medium, and long. Short meaning, you know, less than a year, medium 1 to 2 years, 3 or longer. So it could be done. I think it, you know, is a recommendation by us if we agree that it's an A priority because of the nature and the characteristics we just discussed. And the time frame can be done in the near term. Anybody have any suggestions for changing anything there in terms of the priority or the time frame? Joe or Chong, anything from you?
No, I think those are modest changes. I think it probably doesn't really affect anyone too horribly. Probably sooner the better, right?
Right. Okay, so keeping in mind, I just put this out for editorial purposes, we obviously aren't looking to do anything that's going to upset any balance in town, and we certainly are well ahead in our financial standing at this point in time for this year, and we expect that probably next year we will see considerable overvalue for things like transfer tax, things like that, which will help us. There will come a time when the economic conditions in general aren't so great, and we will need to have these ready to implement. So that's really the mission and goal here, not is to add to an already very lucrative bottom line. Bill?
It's just one thing to consider, when do we want to suggest to the commissioners when to increase the hotel tax? Whether we want to do that March 31st?
That's actually that's the next bullet there, so absolutely. Okay, so everybody's okay with that priority and time frame. We'll move on to the next one. The next one is to, as Bill alluded, the possibility of increasing the hotel tax that was implemented this year. And I've been made aware by some of the folks, Bill Stevens had mentioned this to me recently, that there is some legislative action taking place in support of the county taking a share of that residential rental income, right, that is now at 3%. Bill, you in a position you can expand on that just a little bit, just in terms of what you're aware of?
It came to my knowledge about roughly 4 or 5 months ago that the state was looking at opportunities for additional income and where the variances might be, where local municipalities have not captured those types of rates or increased those rates. I'm not currently aware, Dave, of the current progress, but I will look into it and report back.
We know that there's some activity going on in Dover relating to that, as I've been, whether it was something you mentioned or someone else, I can't recall. So there is some action afoot on that. Obviously, if you look at it from the standpoint of Dewey's benefit here, it's kind of before the county takes theirs, perhaps we should consider taking our share and increasing that, right? That's what we're talking about.
Are we talking about hotels, or did you say that?
It's both residential rentals and it would be for the hotels as well.
And that's gonna be the same rate for both?
I don't know that that's the case. It's, you know,
The conversations I've heard, Joe, were specifically on the accommodation for residential.
That's what I thought you said. And not hotel.
I'll clarify to make sure of that.
Because I think that's gonna, in Dewey, I think that's gonna create a problem.
as Bill, I think, began to point out, the hotel accommodations tax has built in the ability to, you know, to increase it without doing anything further, either through Dover or referendum or anything that we would need to do. It can just be enacted. So I look at this as it should be a high priority if in fact Dover is beginning to look at this seriously and may act on it soon. And it is a fairly straightforward thing for us to do. Perhaps not for our accommodations tax, because that would require, I think, a referendum in order to increase that from the current 3%. But it is something that we think should be put on a track. We've discussed this before. It's just what's new here is that Dover is looking like they're going to act on this soon, and so it increases probably the priority that we should give it to attend to.
But I think what town manager's comment has to do with when we enacted the 1.5 at 3% for the hotel tax, we had the opportunity annually to increase that, potentially the budget finance committee to put that recommendation forth based on timing, whether that should be 1/1. And Bill, I don't know if that's something you talked to town solicitor about in terms of the word annually is, you know, is that 1 year after? Because while we had the opportunity potentially as of 1/1, we did not enact it until 7/1. So does that mean the rate could not happen until 7/1 of next year?
Right. I would suggest that that be taken up with the new budget and finance committee that's going to be organized in the coming month or so, right? Because that's going to have to be something, if you want a recommendation for budget and finance, I don't know that we can get to that today. I think what we can safely recommend is that this ought to be considered a priority and something that could be done in a relatively short time frame. Perhaps not the accommodations tax so much, but increasing the hotel.
Which is already in our charter.
Yeah, that's already.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I feel that we have brought that up in the, since I've been on the budget committee, and for years asked about increasing the hotel accommodations. So, I feel that, not from the budget committee, but it was not really taken up or acted on.
Well, you're talking about the hotel
Mhm.
accommodation tax? Well, it was implemented just in June of this
Right,
this
but
year.
maybe not to the extent that,
Well, it was like, it was given at was it 1 or 1.5%?
1.5.
1.5%, has the ability to be up to 3%. Right, so, and the question is it, the time to do that? And, think about it in terms of, if Dover is gonna move forward and take something out of, that Sussex County is gonna take something here, we have to be prepared to act fairly quickly to do that. So I think it's more about timing than anything else. So, but more visibility of what's going on in Dover relating to that would be helpful. Bill, thanks for offering to get a little more intel on that for us, and that'll of course be helpful. Does anyone have any suggestions on, and by the way, the $100,000 to $500,000 range there is really a bit of a swag, but given that the 3% of the now residential accommodations tax brings in about almost 500,000. It's easy to see how each 1% increase of that would yield about 150,000, 160,000 in new income. And so can't really, target that much very specifically, but it's a significant amount of money for the town. Anybody have any questions or suggestions about changing the priority for that? Or does everybody believe that that is one of the things that should be an A priority for us? Chung and Joe?
Looks good as is, Dave.
Okay. Chung, are you still there?
Looks good to me.
Okay, you're okay. Okay, very good. All right, on we go. Improve residential rental collection, identify transgressors. Who put a word like that in there? This also is something that we've been talking about for a number of years, and it's had some activity thanks to Phil's work here recently. I'll ask Phil to talk a little bit about that.
I got the entire data from the county and sort of started looking through it, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens of anomalies as far as the county data. The plan is once town hall gets the staff and is determine what's the best way of figuring out what to do with this data, and it would be my recommendation that we print out.
can I ask you what data you're talking about?
We're talking about real estate data,
Yeah, but specifically, what,
everything in the town of Dewey Beach.
every property that's owned, I don't understand. Okay.
It's the Sussex County property
Uh-huh,
database, and it's searchable, printable, and all kinds of things. And we're trying to determine if somebody is paying a rental tax or not, the accommodations tax.
I understand the purpose, I just didn't understand what that was, what you were trying to collect.
I'm trying to determine whether a property is a rental or not, and whether they're paying the accommodations tax
Right,
or not.
I understand the purpose, I just didn't understand what the county, I know they have a record of the properties that are owned, but they don't have a
Well-
base of rentals, right?
The town has a list of things that are rentals, so
Right,
comparing the
right.
two to see
Okay, I
which
get it.
one is a rental that's not paying the accommodations tax. At any rate, the plan was to print it out by street name, and either code enforcement or whomever can do the survey and determine, is this a different car every week? This is a tough thing, how do you determine if it's a rental? Now, Dave said that we are still giving out decals to rental properties, is that true, Dale, do you know?
Yeah,
Supposed to be.
And of course, how do you enforce whether they wear the decal, put the decal on the thing or
Supposed
not?
to be
These
on
are,
the front facing window, I believe. Not sure.
They're supposed to, but does anybody check to see if they do it?
No,
And-
no,
Right, again. And I will come up with, eventually with recommendations when we have enough staffing in the town to help with this and everything else. And we'll see where we go. We gotta start somewhere, and that could help.
But Phil, is it your take that there is enough here that's worth going after based on your, just looking around in town and seeing what you see as you run in town?
It's difficult to say. We talked about a couple of years ago how many rental properties we had, and it's reduced from around 700 to 500 or something like that. Why is that? Have people moved down? Do we have any idea what our year-round population is in Dewey? Do we have any means of determining that? Properties could very well have been rentals, and somebody said, well, I'm retiring, I'm moving down to the beach. Or not.
Well, we did say in a couple of meetings ago that it was interesting that we had dropped from 7 or 750 in rental licenses down into the 500 range in these last couple of years specifically. So that's, it gives you cause to be a little curious, right?
And as somebody pointed out, Airbnb and what have you will pay the accommodations tax, the fee on it. But after a renter has rented from a property, they don't have to use Airbnb anymore because the owner of the property can identify and deal directly with them instead of through Airbnb. That's a very interesting thing.
You bet. Bill Zolper, would it be something that you think that we'd have the resources to look further and kind of take, a little bit of action on this in the off-season?
So we did hire somebody to look into, on the internet, to try to determine rentals that were street by street, and then compare them, as Phil has said, to the folks who've actually taken rental license. Person was employed with us for about 3.5, 4 weeks, was offered a full-time job with benefits, left. We actually met with Phil at least once, maybe twice. But I think there is enough there. It's a matter, there's these companies you can hire for about $14,000 or $15,000 that will go out and try to identify people that are renting their residence but are not complying, but they turn those names over to you and you have to do the actual comparison. So I think it is enough to look at and to continue. I think there is a lost amount of revenue there that the town should be taking.
It's very interesting with the rental agencies online, Airbnb and what have you. It is, until you're ready to commit, you can't find the address.
So what you have to do is look at the picture, we talked about this,
Sure.
look at the picture and
Yeah.
try to compare that
Yeah.
to a street. It's a lot of legwork.
It's a lot of labor, right? Okay. But would we agree that it's worth considering as a
Yes.
potential
I
revenue
would
source?
think so.
Okay. And should it, because it's something we've talked about a lot over the years and, it's relatively straightforward to do, it could be done in a relatively soon timeframe, meaning about, less than a year's timeframe we could begin. And for that reason, I thought it would be an A priority. It's, significant chunk of money, easy to do, we know what to do to accomplish it, and, to me, that's an A priority. Anybody have any feelings about Joe or Chong, and would you agree that it should be in the A priority list for the recommendations?
I would. My only question is, how, who's enforcing it? Like, who's letting them know that there's a license that you get required to.
That's a process that would have to be developed on how to deal with the scofflaws, essentially.
Gotcha.
Yeah, how to notify them, without creating a problem, right?
Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, I was never told I needed to, but I was never told I needed it. Otherwise, it would have, right? So, yeah, I would imagine that would have to be,
Good.
maybe a huge task actually, but that's forward, so.
Right. As Bill said, a lot of legwork. Joe, you good with that?
Dave, I am good with that as an A priority. Dave, the only comment that I would have is that, whatever record the town has, I think there needs to be, notice sent, that there will be an increased effort to collect the fee.
And the process of how to
Right.
follow the rules.
Right. Okay, duly noted. Okay, very good. Moving on, unfortunately, I kind of shoehorned us into a 5 o'clock finish here because we have a comp plan meeting scheduled to begin at 5, so let me just move this along. Review,
Happy hour.
that's exactly right. Review and adjust personnel levels, job functions, and compensation. We've talked about this a couple of meetings ago. We acknowledge that it could be a boomerang effect. I think, Bill, you said if, the police and the lifeguards are, comparatively underpaid compared to, our towns surrounding and such, it could end up, going in the opposite direction. But I thought that, this deserved to be on the list and could be started. I think you said you had actually begun that process. Anything you want to add?
So we started comparing out salaries for police officers against other small towns, also looking at the benefits they receive in other small towns, benefits being 100% of their insurance, take-home cars, things of that nature. We have fallen behind, and it's going to take us some time to catch up, but if we don't start, we're just going to go deeper and deeper. We're approximately anywhere between $8,000 and $9,000 behind the next department on our starting salaries for our police officers. And for a new officer coming in, for the first couple of years, when you train them, you send them up to the State Police Academy for 5 months, and then they're learning for the next year and a half or so. When they get into their 3rd and 4th year, and they start settling in, they become more mature, and they're starting to think about their future. When they look at another police department that's making $5,000, $7,000, $8,000 more, the privilege or to work in Dewey Beach isn't what it used to be maybe, and they do go to someplace else, maybe in Ocean View or Selbyville or Frankfurt or Dagsboro or Middlesboro, because now they have to start thinking about his or her family. So it comes down to money, in that Sheena and I have been looking at some numbers, and I mentioned it at the last meeting with the commissioners and the mayor, that we really need to look at the overall salaries, and the mayor's looked at it, or we talked about it, about putting a personnel package together for the whole town. But the salaries currently are, they're definitely underpaid compared to other departments in our area.
I just want to say I heartily support that, and if you looked at the minutes from a couple of years ago, this was an issue, and I had looked at comparing towns, and we were behind and have been behind for a while, and I agree that we really need to do something to catch up.
Okay. So personnel costs, I think that tends to lean in the direction that it could end up being more of an expense in the town, depending on how that settles in, adjusting in other areas. But I think we all agree that it's important to continue to work on. You're already doing it, so it's a work in progress. I listed it as a B. It could easily be changed to an A priority if the group feels that way. Can I ask, what's the general consensus here? Is that an A priority, or should we leave it as a B here?
I think it should be an A priority.
Well, I also think that we maybe should identify the police, and it says personnel levels. I think the police are definitely an A. I don't know if the rest of it is A or B, but I don't know enough to can further define it.
How about if we just we'll make it an A/B, and we'll say, particularly for the police, it's an
Yes.
A, and for the other personnel, it could still be a B.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yes, Mayor?
I just wanted, a few years ago, we discussed all this, and made a special increase in all the police salaries. We never did anything with the admin. Now we're talking about, and I apologize because I haven't read your background document, but now we're talking about the police salaries again, and we need to talk about admin also
Yes.
to bring them up.
That's part of this as well, and We haven't done the research on this to see, it's not really budget and finance's role to do that, it's the town manager's role, he'll take that on, I'm sure. So we'll leave it as an A/B in that recommendation. Okay, moving on. There are certain beach-related costs that, over time, we've had this discussion that could potentially be paid for out of the beach tax fund that we have that's, I don't know, last I saw it's around at least $5 million worth, I believe, is in the fund. This was something that was brought to our attention a while ago, but, I think it has some warts and some difficulties in its implementation, whether it's actually able to do that. For instance, could you take the lifeguard costs and have that paid for, which would free up, several $100,000 a year in, operating funds for the town. So we recommend that it's something to be looked into. It's going to take, probably a medium term to do, and we considered it a big priority. Anyone have any comments or suggestions about that one? Okay, hearing none, keep moving. Create a focused donation line item in the budget. We had started to do that in the current year's budget, and I think we eventually took it out because we felt that it just, or either wasn't needed or we couldn't quite estimate what it would be worth. And there was some discussion originally whether we started this process when we had a real first draft of the budget. There was a significant imbalance, right? We were underwater, as we always are in the first draft. And so it became an extra line item, which eventually got removed, and as we've seen, the town's performance has been fine. But there is certainly still, room for doing something like this. We always said that it has to be purposeful on a particular issue relating to the town, and so that would have to be. So that's, that's just a bucket. I targeted that as somewhere in the $10,000 to $25,000 range for at least the first year, maybe going forward. Anybody have any feelings about that one way or the other? Okay, all good?
We did 5 o'clock, right?
We're
still budget.
We're still budget.
Still budget.
Okay, infrastructure / town services fee. Zeke was one of the folks who, recommended that we take a look at this a while back. He couldn't be here today, but there is certainly a need, as we all know, for long-term infrastructure funding. And, there was some discussion and acknowledgement that you could call it a town services or an infrastructure fee, but it would be construed as a tax on the property owners. And so that, we're going to require significant approvals, passing through legislature and referendums and such. So it was, put lower in the priority list, but my own personal soapbox is the sooner we start socking away large amounts of money for sea level rise and such, the sooner we'll feel better about this kind of thing. But it's probably not going to be anything that we would expect the council to act on in the coming year, but in the 1 to 3 year time frame, I think it's reasonable to say it's something we ought to really be looking at. Anybody have any comments or questions about that one? Suggestions? Joe?
No comment, Dave.
Thanks. Thanks.
I thought you said Jill.
I did say Joe.
No, go ahead.
You got anything?
I was just gonna say, if there is infrastructure money that federally becomes available, I'm sure, that we will go after whatever our share is, but that also, I hope that we're pursuing grants that might be available for sea level and that sort of thing, but.
Right. But to begin putting away as much money as the town can afford to do and still, maintain its
Right.
operating expenses.
Right.
Is, we all know that day's coming. It's just every year that goes by that we don't begin to, save for that day is a year we haven't done it. So, okay, and last and everybody's favorite, because it always needs to be on the list because we have an obligation to put it on the list, is the property tax. No one likes it. Everybody understands it's political football, but it may well be necessary for the town's long-term survival. I put it as a B/C. It's probably something that we'll continue to kick down the road as long as we can, and we have years like we have now. But it would be an undertaking. It is not a popular thing. No one's ever going to run for a town council based on their support of the property tax. or get elected anyway. And so that's.
We're making a mistake.
That's right. Make it, okay, we'll make it a C, that's fair. Okay. Do I have any other questions or comments about these recommendations that we're talking about here? Chong or Joe, anything you'd like to share?
No comment.
Okay,
No comment.
all right. So what I'd like to do is ask for a motion to, take this information as it stands today, but modify it based on what we've talked about, which is change the personnel level bucket here to an A/B, focusing the A efforts on the police in particular, and also, as we just said, make the property tax a C rather than a B/C. And with those two changes, can I have a motion to accept or to recommend this slate of new revenue sources to the town council for their next meeting and consideration?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Do I hear any nays? Very good. With that, we have, John, was that?
Jake?
Yes, Gary?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I just have a question.
Hey.
I don't have a copy of that document I got, it's just proof. And I don't think it was posted publicly. I mean, can you include that, or will you include that within your minutes so that it can get a little wider dissemination? I'd like to get a copy as well.
Of course. Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, will do. And of course, it'll be something that we'll recommend and put in front of council. But yes, you're right. I'll include that with the meeting minutes. Okay.
Great.
Okay, that completes our efforts here for the Budget and Finance Committee for the year. I hope that you all, want to thank everyone who's participated for this year. It's been interesting, and these virtual meetings were wonderful. It's in-person meetings, getting used to them again is not so easy as I thought, but we're working through it. And I won't be continuing as chair in the next Budget and Finance session, so I hope someone will be interested in taking that on, and the commissioners I know will be looking for potential people to chair the next Budget and Finance Committee through the next coming year. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?